Continuation of my end of the year series. These are the top 10 melodic death metal albums of 2025. This list was pretty hard to compile. There were a lot of albums to choose, but I was able to pick 10. I will be doing these videos during the month of December, so I have more to come, including traditional heavy metal, death metal, and black metal, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss anything. With that being said, let's get into it. Coming in number 10 is Heaven Shall Burn with Heimat. They are a German melodic death metal band that also includes influences from metalcore. This is their 10th studio album, released on June 27, 2025. The album explores the concept of home in a broad philosophical sense. The album is filled with fast melodic riffing and the big and epic guitar leads of the melodic death metal, combined with the aggression and breakdowns of metalcore. Key tracks on the album include War is the Father of All, which is a heavy song featuring a real-life choir from Ukraine and addresses themes related to war and conflict. There's also My Revocation of Compliance, a no-compromise, fast-paced track that hits like a freight train, showcasing the band's raw, aggressive metalcore side. There is A Whisper from Above, which highlights the band's melodic side with soaring guitar work and an anthemic feel. There's also A Silent Guard, a longer haunting piece that builds dynamically, featuring some melodic guitar work and background choir elements. The song is a tribute to everyday heroes like first responders. The album also features a notable guest appearance by Jesse Leach of Killswitch Engage on a cover of the Killswitch song Numbered Days. Overall, out of the few albums released this year with elk on the cover, there would be more of those in another video, but this one was pretty good, coming in at number 10.
What makes us stay?
Coming in number 9 is Swedish melodic death metal band Mourning with the Immortal. They formed in the year 2000. This is their 7th full-length album. It opens with a short intro track, like most bands these days. First main track is called Silver Crescent. Song begins with some staccato, almost Meshuggah-style guitar riffs, going into some melodic death metal with a very dense sound. Something along the lines of the band Insomnium, and deep guttural vocals along the lines of a band like Amorphis. Next track was called Song of the Cranes. This one had similar sound with big riffs and classic melodic death metal sound. Next track was called As Long as the Twilight Stays. This one had a softer and more melodic sound in the first part of the song, but it still had that classic Melodeath sound, and the song picked up the pace during its 7-minute runtime. Another strong track was called The Sojourner, with that classic Gothenburg sound, and there was a track that sounded completely different called Motionless Sky, featuring a soft acoustic sound and softer, clean vocals. It was one of shorter tracks at only 3 minutes, but showing the band is willing to experiment with different sounds and feelings. Overall, another strong album for fans of melodic death metal. There's touches of progressive metal, a little bit of black metal, and also the first of 2 albums with a water bird on the cover, and there just happens to be lots of animals going on here today. So, moving on. Coming in number 8 with Amorphis with the album Borderlands. If you don't know, Amorphis has been around since the early 90s. Started out as a death doom band, but eventually shifted more towards progressive metal and melodic death metal. The album opens with a circle, which is mostly keyboards and clean vocals and guitars sitting more in the background. But after this is Bones. I really love this song. It has big guitar riffs, Middle Eastern sounds, harsh death growls, and an awesome track. And some of the guitar playing reminds me of something you would hear on an old Dio or a Ritchie Blackmore album. And the rest of the album is a mix of songs leaning more towards progressive metal, some ballads, some heavier tracks, and I hear influences ranging from Jethro Tull to Opeth. And if I mention one more standout track, it would be The Lantern, featuring these cool Middle Eastern style guitar riffs, clean vocals, heavier sections, and it's a laid back track, but I really liked it. Overall, this is one of those albums I didn't like it that much when I first listened to it, with the exception of the song Bones that I liked a lot. But this album is a grower, got better over time, and it's worthy of making this list. Coming in number 7 is Finnish melodic death metal band Omnium Gatherum with their 10th studio album, May the Bridges Burn Light the Way, released in November of 2025. It's a loose concept album telling stories from the streets, using various experiences and perspectives, and exploring themes of anger, fear, addiction, brotherhood, and the chaos of the modern urban landscape. The album features several standout songs, some of which were released as singles prior to the album's launch, including The Last Hero, which was a memorable song that mixed elements of aggression, melody, and groove. There was My Pain, slightly more progressive track than The Last Hero. It was catchy, has lyrics about adversity and anger and fear and the process of conquering those feelings. And there was Walking Ghost Phase, which has elements of thrash metal in the sound. There was The Darkest City, a song that uses this urban landscape as a metaphor for a world in chaos. And finally, Barricades, a very high energy track, and that pushes the band into full throttle mode with lots of guitars, lots of drums, but also some keyboard textures to round out the sound. This was my first time listening to this band. I enjoyed the album. Another one of those albums had a very classic Northern European melodic death metal sound. Coming in number 6 is Eluveitie's album with their 9th studio album called And. I'm probably mispronouncing all of that, but released on April 25th, 2025 via Nuclear Blast Records. The album's concept is about ancient, really old Celtic mythological texts and spirituality, and the band translates it for a modern audience. This is one of those bands, it's hard to classify, but melodic death metal is just one of the many genres that they mix, so for that reason I included them on this list. Basically, the band mixes traditional Celtic folk melodies, instruments with modern melodic death metal, and it's the first time I listened to this band. I remember I had a promo of it back in the day, or earlier in the year, but according to my research, I read that this one is heavier than the previous ones, which I haven't listened to yet. They use lots of different instruments that you don't usually hear in metal, like violins, hurdy-gurdies, bagpipes, whistles, and other stuff. And there are lots of good songs like Paranoias, which opens the song. And it's a heavier track with blast beats and guttural vocals and fiddles and pipes. And the prodigal one's a slow-moving doomy song. It builds slowly, has these strings and like chanting vocals and sludgy riffing and epic folk melodies. And there's Premonition, one of the heavier tracks, more intense, just straight up melodic death metal. And there was probably my favorite. That was the clip I played in the beginning, called A When. And this really highlights the band's Celtic roots, has traditional instrumentation, very catchy song. And there's All for One, an uplifting ballad featuring a vocal intro, dazzling progressions, and flutes evoking natural fantasy-like scenes, and Anakara, atmospheric track, mostly acoustic, featuring spoken word storytelling, and it's just an immersive track. But overall, very unique album, very unique band, and good enough to make the list. Coming in number 5 is An Abstract Illusion with their 3rd full-length album, Sleeping City, released on October 17, 2025 via Wheel of Tep Records. They are a Swedish progressive death metal band. They're very complex. They have these compositions. They have lots of atmosphere, depth, these cinematic soundscapes. And this band falls under so many different genres, so I wasn't really sure what to put them on. I could have put them in death metal, but melodic death metal is one of the many genres represented on the album, so I included it here. The album is very dense, it has a layered sound, it has a lot of progressive death metal riffs, but there's also keyboards. And the band wanted this album to be like a dystopian science fiction film, something like Blade Runner, but if it was composed by a death metal band. That was their envision for this. But we got some great songs. Black Murmur has this creepy synth and dark atmosphere. There's Like a Geyser Ever Erupting. This is one of the heavier songs, has pounding drums, old school death metal guitars. There's Frost Flower, which is a softer song, which has more of that progressive melodic side of the band with keyboards, acoustic guitars, and more of an Irish folk style clean vocals. And Emmett, an 11-minute track with a lot going on. There's heaviness, atmosphere, lead breaks, keyboards, and then there's the title track, The Sleeping City, a 10-minute plus epic, and that ends the album. It just has a little bit of everything in that one final track. But this album is very complex. You have to listen to it many times to really understand it, but every time you listen to it, it gets better. That's why it's pretty much right in the middle of this list. It could have been higher, but there were 4 other albums that were a little better that I liked. And number 4 is the Halo Effect's second album, March on the Unheard. This band is bringing back that classic melodic death metal sound, especially the sound of that late 90s, early 2000s Gothenburg metal sound. And that is because the members of this band actually helped create the sound in their former bands, which were In Flames and Dark Tranquillity. Features lots of death metal style riffs, melodic lead guitars, and aggressive growls and clean vocals from vocalist Mikael Stan. It is described as the album fans wished In Flames had released in recent years, as they kind of changed their sound. The album is also more consistent and improved over their debut, Days of the Lost, with better pacing and more memorable songs. But if I have anything negative to say, it's that the band kind of plays it safe with this one. They stay within the melodic death metal genre. But on a positive note, they do it very well, so it's a pure melodic death metal album. But we got great songs like Detonate, just a high energy burst of pure melodic death metal, comparable to classic In Flames. There's also Our Channel to the Darkness, featuring aggressive riffs, haunting melodies. It's a dynamic, powerful tune with anthemic quality. And there's also What Would Become, which has a clean guitar intro before launching into this heavy death metal riff, and has a catchy chorus that will stick in your head. Overall, this is the most melodic death metal sounding album on this list. Coming in number 3 is Nightfall with Children of Eve. This is a Greek metal band, so I am biased with this one. You know I am a fan of the Greek metal scene. They're one of the first Greek extreme metal bands that came out in the early 90s, although they don't get as much attention as the other bands like Rotting Christ or Septic Flesh. The band is hard to put into one genre, but I kept them on the melodic death metal list as that's probably like their dominant sound. There are good songs. The album opens with a track I Hate. It has some female vocals doing the spoken word thing, and she just says the names of the songs, and the song continues with deep guttural vocals, chanting vocals, death metal guitars, blast beats, neoclassical guitars, symphonic elements. It has a lot. That was the clip I played in the beginning. Then there's track number 7 with Outlandish Desire to Disobey, one of the more melodic songs on the album. And then there's a darker song called The Makara of the Deceiver, which sounded like some slow and atmospheric black metal. And they close the album with the song Christian Svengali, which is a mix of slow black metal, faster galloping thrashy guitar riffs. And as you can see, they mix a lot of genres. A lot of it leans towards black metal, but it's mostly melodic death metal. But anyway, one of my favorites of the year. Coming in number 2 is Allegaeon with the Ossuary Lens. They are a technical and melodic death metal band. It's one of my first time listening to this band, but according to my research, this album brings back their original vocalist Ezra Haynes, and is also considered to be a return to form. Even though I wasn't familiar with the band, I really enjoyed this album from the first day it was released. They seem to blend a little of everything from death metal to metalcore to melodic death metal and technical death metal. This is another one of those bands where I probably could have put them on another different list because they mix in so much different stuff. Lots of intricate guitar riffs. There's 2 guitarists, Greg Burgess and Michael Stanchel, and has some awesome, very powerful drumming by Jeff Saltzman. And the bass guitar is very prominent. It's also very technical, and his name is Brandon Michael. And the songs are dark. Lyrics are about death, and standout tracks are Driftwood. It's very catchy, very hook-driven. It's melodic death metal. The Swarm is very intense with technical guitar work. Dark Matter Dynamics has cool fingerstyle guitar, has a guest star called Adrian Belew, and Wake Circling Above is one of the longer, more progressive tracks. So there's a lot going on here. It's not easy listening music. It's for fans of extreme metal. Music is very technical and progressive, and I like it. If you like extreme metal, you will like it. Check it out. It's not number 1 though. My number 1 is Arch Enemy with Blood Dynasty. It's a 12th studio album released March 28, 2025. First studio album featured guitarist Joey Concepcion as a full-time member following Jeff Loomis's departure in 2023. The album is also the final album with vocalist Alyssa White-Gluz, who left the band not too long ago in November 2025. The album has a mix of her signature guttural style and clean vocals Rest of the lineup remained consistent, featuring founding member Michael Heimat and Charlie D'Angelo on bass and Daniel Erlinson on drums. I thought it was a very solid Arch Enemy album. I'm a big fan of this band. I've been listening to them for probably about 10 years now. Some key tracks include Dream Stealer. The song opens the album, has a very cinematic and symphonic feel. There is Illuminate the Past. That was the clip I played. Has clean vocals, but then there's tracks with more of a classic sound, like Liars and Thieves and Blood Dynasty. Had memorable choruses and great melodies. And there was Paper Tiger, which sounded more like traditional heavy metal with lots of melody. And there was a song with lyrics in French called Vivre Libre, which is a cover song originally by 1980s French heavy metal band Blasphème. And this is also the first time Arch Enemy included a cover song on the standard edition track listing of one of their studio albums, featuring vocalist Alyssa Whiteluz performing clean vocals in French, which, according to Michael Heimat, worked well as she is a native French speaker. This is just a side note, but now that she's independent, I think we're going to hear more songs like this from Alyssa, which hopefully she'll release a solo album in 2026. But overall, I'm a big Arch Enemy fan, so that's the reason why it is my number one. So that's all for this episode. I will be putting all of my best of 2025 videos on a playlist. I will add them as I make them. It will be right there. And as this is the second episode, this is the third episode. So there should be maybe like 2 videos there. I did thrash and I did power metal already. But please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss anything. I have more to come throughout December. I have traditional heavy metal next. And then there will be rock and a few other genres. So they'll be released throughout December. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.